Let's talk about the Yu-Gi-Oh format. I know this is one of the favorite pastimes of content creators in the Yu-Gi-Oh space, is to and moan about how much they hate Yu-Gi-Oh right now, and Yu-Gi-Oh is dead, yada 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 yada. And this was even more true than ever last year during the Year of Fire, where a lot of players and content creators, like myself, voiced their opinions of dismay and dislike of what was going on in Yu-Gi-Oh! But now we're in 2025. The Year of Fire is over. The banlist has made sure of that, as well as new product releases have edged out any sort of viability that the Fire decks had. We are firmly in a brand new metagame. And how do we feel right now? Is this format healthy? Is this where we want Yu-Gi-Oh to be? Let's talk about it. So a few days ago, a Philadelphia regional happened that has 740 players. That is a lot of players, even for Philadelphia standards. They can sometimes hit the 10-round mark, which requires about 500 players, and that is impressive. That makes for a huge regional, but 740 is crazy. That's the makings of a small YCS in the America regions, larger than most YCS in the Latin America region. And this shows that people are enjoying Yu-Gi-Oh, as past regionals in the area have had lower attendance during the Fire formats, not hitting 10 rounds and sometimes looking kind of disgustingly low. And I've seen other creators like MBT echo that this format is finally healthy and it's good. But truthfully, I don't share this opinion. So I don't want to scream from the rooftops saying this format is terrible and I hate Yu-Gi-Oh, because that's not true. I still love this game, as well as I don't think this format is terrible. However, I think this is almost like us reeling from the pure terribleness of what Fire is. This format still is not great, and there's one big culprit in this. Now, ironically, going into this format, I expected Ryzal to be rather boring. Its play patterns are mostly linear, and the gameplay is not the most interesting. However, it brings you back to some core Yu-Gi-Oh! Making reads is important, playing for follow-up is important, playing the long game with resources is important. All those things matter with Ryzal. Despite my initial kind of concerns with Ryzal being a boring deck, it's turned out to not be, and I actually quite like this deck. I think it's a lot of fun to play against, and if all I was playing were a bunch of Ryzal variants and mirrors, I'd be content for a little bit. No, where my problem comes from in this format is with Maliss. See, now Maliss feels to me like Snake Eyes or any of the Fire decks from the past. It's a combo deck that is too strong when it goes first, and honestly, it's almost unlike Snake Eye, it's not that strong going second, and it leaves a couple big issues in the format. My biggest problem with this deck is when it goes first. When it goes first, it's one-card combos, which we've discussed for the last year, how as a player base we want to stray away from. They're not enjoyable. Something Dormouse, Activating Mouse in the Underground, White Rabbit, I don't love dealing with it. And uninterrupted, it is far more threatening than a Ryzal one-card combo, as well as it's not met with a single choke point as easily, unless you stop the literal first thing, which of course then makes it easier to extend past, much like Snake Eyes. And then the problems get further exacerbated when we look at the deck when it has an extender. So say you have Ornithrones, Engage, a Kestra Unicorn, or a Bestial, essentially a way that generates 2 extra bodies, because then you get to go into cards like Haggard Lizardos or SP, and then build up into Link 3s. And if you've played against Maliss, you'll know that having the second hand trap for the second extender doesn't do anything. It's like when you played against Fiendsmith Snake Eyes, you could imperm the Witch after you impermed the Snake Eye Ash. Now you lose to the Fiendsmith cards. You needed the third hand trap for their second card, which can make going second feel impossible. You have to build your deck with an enormous amount of hand traps to win going second. And it favors almost going second in these formats, which is what I did in Snake Eye for a bit, because I built the deck with like 30 hand traps, like 12 engine cards. But it's frustrating because it leaves little agency to the player. There's not much decision making to be made. It's just not something that I enjoy, and these are rehashing the same arguments we've had in the last year. And that way Maliss feels like playing against Snake Eye Fiendsmith, which I'm sick of, and I'm sure you guys are as well. But I think it's honestly a bit worse than that as well, because Maliss is actually kind of shit. When it goes second, the deck is not very good at playing through disruption. It needs to bridge together 3 bodies in order to make something meaningful. So unlike Fiendsmith cards in the Snake Eye deck, or Flamebirch, which required a 2-body commitment, you need 3. And that means removal is way more effective versus this deck. And when it plays going second, Maliss has to rely on non-engine to make that distance up, where Snake Eye didn't often need to do that, especially for its rogue decks. However, with removal just not existing as a hand trap form, when you go second against Maliss, it may as well be Snake Eye. And this is overall kind of very frustrating, because it feels like when I play versus Maliss, it's a lot of the time a coin flip where I have no control over the match. And at first I thought, okay, historically Yu-Gi-Oh players have avoided these type of decks because they're not fun, and they're really not that good. But for some reason, at least in Toronto, there's a shit ton of Maliss, and I'm really not enjoying it. I just want to play against Ryzal and other like fair decks. I love the Fiendsmith engine. I know it prices people out, and that's an entire other issue, but the Fiendsmith play patterns I enjoy. However, I'm playing against Maliss, and I'm just getting FTK'd essentially every game, and that's why I said I want to delete Cybers. And yeah, I'm taking my hate out on Cybers too much, because in reality, I love Salad. I don't love Salad, but I think Salad and Marincess like totally fine decks. The only real offenders are Mathmech and Maliss, but God, these are very frustrating design. And Mathmech is the same thing. If you play properly against Mathmech, Mathmech cannot beat removal cards. So if you go first against Mathmech with some removal, like an IP and an SP, they're gonna do nothing. They just can't do anything. And it feels like the same thing with Maliss. I mean, Maliss plays in specifically SP better because of the banish stuff, but it's not good. And that means I don't want to play Maliss, but I really don't want to play against it either. And when you're dreading playing against the deck because of how the play, patterns are, and not because of strictly a matchup, that's a bad thing. Now, my hope is that with Supreme Darkness, Molcharmy Nialis, or I'm sure it's a new TCG name, reflects banish in graveyards, will give us an extra card that combats Maliss going second, especially post side, to make it feel a little more comfortable. But right now, the only cards that deal with it are Lancia and Fubulas that give you any semblance of hope. Nibiru paired with some other stuff can get there, but it's still asterisk can, because depending on the extenders and the hand and the pilots, it still doesn't matter, just like Snake Eyes. So with Fubulas and Lancia, that's all we have. Because let's talk about Lancia. Lancia offers essentially no counterplay, where Fubulas at least gives some creative options. I can't imagine playing Maliss partially for the reason of getting Lancia 1 in every 3 games. That has to feel awful. And maybe it's okay 1 every 3 games post side, but going to a long tournament, that sounds abysmal. You have to deal with the decks already a little under average consistency, deal with its issues into removal going second. Now it's Lancia 1 every 3 games to go second as well. I just can't fathom this being a good deck to play. However, it's popular and it leads to a lot of non-matches, and you can watch the locals vlogs I've been playing. I built my Golden deck for Ryzal, and I played like 5 Maliss in a 7-round tournament, and it led to a lot of games that are really not interesting. Either I went first and the deck didn't do well, so it still lost, or I went second, I hand trapped twice, did nothing, and I lost, or I Lancia'd them and they lost in 5 seconds. And this goes back to discussions I've made before, like what I hated about Yu-Gi-Oh, talking about how much I hate Lingering Floodgates. Lancia is one of them. And I talked about Lancia being one that should be banned back then, even though it was doing nothing in the format, because when a banish deck comes around, we have this problem. And again, it's just frustrating to play against as a Maliss player. If Maliss was more interactive all around, or if Lancia didn't exist, therefore making Maliss better, maybe there'd be better ways of going about it and the format could heal itself, but overall ends up in a shape that I don't like. Maliss is just kind of the black swan, or what is it, the ugly duckling in the group that is unhealthy, where everything else feels like it's finally in a good place, and Yu-Gi-Oh is healing. So yeah, I hope that with another Molcharmy, there's kind of 9 draws going second against Maliss that edge out its favorability, and I hope we're all in agreement that we will just F this stupid Maliss deck. I want to have this discussion because a lot of people are talking about how much Yu-Gi-Oh has improved, and while I don't want to sound like a complete Debbie Downer, I still think that Maliss is a problem. We have to let Konami know that this is not okay. It's something we don't want to see, because I'm done with them. I don't want to see more of these decks. Give me more Ryzals. Let me know what you guys think, though. Do you feel the same way on Maliss that I do? Now, a lot of people that I've talked to about the format, who say that they like the format, have then agreed with me on the asterisk of Maliss. And if you're only playing Maliss once every 10 rounds or whatever, that's very viable. Thunder Dragon was like that in Toss. However, for me, it feels like 1 every 2 formats with Maliss. So I feel like I need to make a PSA. Anyways, guys, that's it for now. Catch you next time.